Hello, Canaan Crew. Welcome back to day 2 of Connecting with Characters. Hopefully you enjoyed lesson number 1 and you had a chance to watch the Frozen video clip that explored the characterization, specifically indirectly. And I want to take it from there today and get you ready for the task you're going to take on today. Okay, so if you remember, we talked about what characterization was. And if you recall, I told you that characterization is the process by which the author reveals the personality of a character. And we also talked about how characterization is revealed through what's called direct characterization and indirect characterization. Now, just a little refresher so you remember the difference. With direct characterization, the writer or the author tells us directly what the characters are like or what their personality traits are. There's no guessing. The author flat out tells you in words what the character is like when it comes to their traits. Indirect characterization, however, is when the writer shows us the personality of the characters through the character's actions, words, appearance, private thoughts, and what other characters say about the characters. In other words, we get to decide what the characters are like through inferring. You probably noticed that now that you're getting to be big kids, a lot of the stories that you are reading are much more indirect characterization based. When you're little, the author has to tell you some of the personality traits of the characters so that you know going into it what they're like. As you get older, though, and the authors get a little bit more advanced in their writing skills, and your big kid brains want a little bit more advanced thinking skills, the authors definitely talk to you in more of an indirect characterization method where they give you hints about the characters and they let you come to the conclusion of what those characters are like. If you remember too, we talked about the 5 ways that an author or a writer helps you understand a character, and it's called the Steele method of characterization. And again, this is when the author indirectly tells you about a character. There are 5 ways that an author does that. The first way is the author's speech. What does the character say? How does a character speak? The second way is through the character's thoughts. What is revealed through the character's private thoughts and feelings? A third way is the character's effect on other people. What is revealed through the character's effect on other people? How do other characters feel or behave in reaction to this character? We saw that a lot with the activity I had you do the other day with Jack Sparrow. Some of you were thinking, well, he doesn't have an effect on others because he doesn't have a relationship. It's not about the relationship. It's about how he affects other people or what other people think of him. And when he got to the dock, it was clear that he had an effect on other people and that they definitely had some thoughts about him. The fourth way is through the character's actions. What does the character do? How does the character behave? What you do says a lot about you as a character, just like what you do as a person says a whole lot about you as a person. And the last way is looks. What does a character look like? How does the character dress? How do they wear their hair, or how do they, what kind of clothing do they wear? That also tells a lot about a character in the way they look. So if you remember, I just my way of remembering it is through the hand. And I just give each finger a different letter and I spell out Steele. As long as I spell out Steele, I usually remember what each of those methods are that a character uses. So hopefully that helped you with my little hint. And just to remind you of what it looks like when we were talking about whether it's direct or indirect, we had a whole bunch of examples. We're not going to do a whole bunch today because I need to get right to your task. But I wanted you to just review, just so you can see a visual, what it's like to be directly told and indirectly. If you remember this one, the girls were clumsy, all 4 of them. If you remember, this was direct characterization. The author flat out tells you what the girls are like. There's no guessing. You're being told that they're clumsy. This one, on the other hand, if you remember about Peter watching his TV, and he wanted to change the channel, but he just laid there and was waiting for Jan to come in, and he was all comfy. It never said he was lazy, but clearly this is an indirect way of saying that Peter is very lazy and he didn't want to get off the couch. He'd rather wait until Jan came in to change the channel. So those are just 2 examples I gave you, okay? So now that we reviewed, now we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to create some characters of our own. So now you will select a character trait from the sheet on the next slide. You can pick any character trait you'd like. On a piece of paper, I want you to create a character frame as shown below. You will look up, you can use dictionary.com, and write a formal definition of the character trait so that you clearly know what that character trait means when you hear that someone possesses that trait. You understand what that looks like. Then you are going to create a make-believe character. You will think about how a character possessing this trait might look, what the character might say, thoughts the character might think, some actions this character might do, or how other characters might interact with your character. In other words, you will indirectly describe them. Once you have framed in your character within your character frame, like below, open a new Google Doc and create a paragraph scene in which the character trait is revealed indirectly to the reader. Need a sample? See the next few slides for some. So, like I told you, on a piece of paper, I want you to recreate something that looks like this just to help you organize your thinking. Okay? So, after you do that, I want you to visit this list of character traits. And you may have to zoom in a little bit on your iPad, but this is a list of lots of different character traits that a person would possess or that a character would have. I want you to pick one of them. Whatever you want, that's your choice. Here's my sample. I decided to do the character trait of being strict. Okay? So if you remember, what I had to do is I first had to identify and look up and write down the real meaning of the word strict. Not what I think it means, but what the dictionary says the word strict means. So if I looked it up, if I looked up in the dictionary, when I looked up the word strict, it says following or enforcing a rule or some rules with great care. That was one of the first definitions of somebody that was strict. So knowing that, the first thing I had to think about is filling in my chart. What might a strict character do? So first I had to think about what they might say, how they might behave, what actions they might have, what other people how they might feel about them. I had to go through all 5 of my columns, just like I showed you, all 5 of the different STEEL methods. So actions, thoughts, speech, appearance, and what others think about them. So here's what I came up with after thinking about that. A strict character would probably know what their rules and expectations were and watch what others are doing very closely to make sure that they are following them as well. They could be very rigid and have high expectations for themselves and everyone else around them. So when I think about a strict person, those are some things that came to my mind. Then I also made a bullet point list of what are some things a strict person might do. What are some thoughts they might have? What are some things they might say? How might they appear, either like in how are they dressed or how might their facial expressions be? And how others would react to them. Now, after I had my list of a couple bullet points for each one of them, I decided to make a scene that I was going to create Mrs. Hanson. Mrs. Hanson is a teacher, and I wanted her to be strict. So I had to think about what were some things that she would be. What were some things that she might think and how might others act with her? So here's my example. Mrs. Hanson was the kind of teacher who some students loved to work with while other students disliked. Whenever she entered the room, you immediately could see everyone sit up with a little taller and look deeply engaged in what they were working on. All chatter ceased and only meaningful comments and conversations could be heard. As she meandered from table to table, eyeing each group's progress, she reminded various students to use complete sentences within their responses and check for proper grammar. As she passed by, some students smiled after receiving compliments on their good and proper work, while others could be seen rolling their eyes while erasing and correcting their mistakes. Mrs. Hanson definitely had an effect on how hard her students worked during their time in class. Okay, so there you go. I never told you Mrs. Hanson was strict. Never in this paragraph did I mention the word strict, did I? However, everything I had her doing, and even the reactions from other people, clearly told you that she was a strict teacher, right? And I did it in a paragraph. I did it in 5 to 7 sentences. So here you go. That's my example. Now, just so you know that kids can do it too, I wanted to include some kid samples for you to look at as well. I will let you read these on your own, but these were created. Now, I know that they were groups of kids because guess what? We did this in groups in school. Unfortunately, we can't do that necessarily anymore because we're all at home. However, if anybody wants to work with a partner, you are welcome to do that on the side. You can create a WebEx space with you and a friend. Totally fine with me. Just let me know that a couple of you are working together. If you want to work with your mom or you want to work with your sister, it's fine with me. Just make sure you're participating and doing your work. So here's an example of the trait that was taken was lazy. Here's a definition. Here's what a lazy person might do. Here is the scene in which the person is clearly a lazy person, but nowhere in this paragraph will you read the word lazy, because that would be direct characterization. You are building a scene where we have to infer the character's laziness. And you don't tell us, but we have to infer using indirect characterization. You build the character and we figure out, holy cow, this Joe guy, he is a lazy lump. Over here, here's determined. Here's a definition. Here's what a determined person might do. Here's a little bit of like what determination based on the definition, what it would look like. And here is Steve and how his determination is very clear, although never does it say Steve is a determined character. Okay. Again, this is your model. Oh, and also have a nice illustration as well. Okay, put something that would go along with your trait. Now, you are welcome to use lazy or determined, but you cannot have any of the same scenario, any of the same things that are mentioned in here. It needs to be your own work. Okay. So, your final typed indirect characterization character building Google Doc as shown in the student samples, and including an image, will be uploaded to Google Classroom by Tuesday, April 14th. So I'm giving you today, tomorrow, over the weekend, and Monday to get that done. So because it's a 4-day weekend, I suggest you work on that today and tomorrow during the day so you can get it done. If you need more time though over the weekend, you have plenty of time, but I will expect it by the end of the day, hopefully earlier so I can upload them, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a slideshow and I'm going to put all of your characters in and I'm going to kind of play a game and see if people can identify what kind of character trait you are trying to show. So that'll come next week when I have your samples. But anyways, I would like them by Tuesday, April 14th. The earlier the better, but that's our target date. Okay, so again, as usual, let me know if you have any questions. I want you to have fun with this, and I'm looking forward to seeing your characters you're creating. Have a great rest of your day.